Trivium have kind of been all over the place since the start of their career, with kind of a lack of identity, you could say. They've really struggled to really get a sound and really stick with it. They've always changed and over these years searched for who they actually are and what they're supposed to sound like. They've really lacked that identity in them. The first two albums being very metalcore in genre, it's very scream heavy. Then the third album completely ditched that genre and idea and went for thrash metal, where the vocals went pure thrash as screams basically disappeared. The whole style shifted, which left the people who were fans of metalcore disappointed, and then people who were fans of thrash interested. Then they went and did Shogun, which is probably considered by many the best album they have done. It incorporated thrash elements as well as heavy metal things, as well as the metalcore stuff. So you had thrash metal singing as well as melodic metal singing, along with some intense riffs, some soaring melodic riffs with some great leads in riffs. You got some incredibly versatile solos, some really hefty sized tracks, and then you also had some screams thrown in there. Then you got In Waves, which basically went a bit kind of commercial in their sound, and Matt changed his vocal style yet again, and so did the overall style. Then came Vengeance Falls, which was produced by David of Disturbed, the lead vocalist, and people complain that it just sounds like Disturbed. I don't like Disturbed, but I actually didn't mind Trivium being like that, because it was just basically another shift, and I don't want a band to always remain exactly the same. I do want to see something different. So it was something different for Matt's vocals and the kind of play style, even though musically it wasn't amazingly diverse or interesting. Then came Beneath the Snow or something like that, which was a very quiet kind of old school kind of rock album. Lacked any sort of screams whatsoever, but the album was very kind of quiet. The mix wasn't great, and again it was another shift and loss of identity. Then came The Sin and the Sentence, which many said was the return to form. It was basically getting back to where Shogun was, and The Sin and the Sentence, some said, was actually better than Shogun, or people said it was just behind that album, while the odd amount of people just said it wasn't good still, and it still isn't Trivium. Now, when I first heard Sin and the Sentence, it was before my YouTube started, so I hadn't been really going out there and really listening and trying to dissect music. So all I heard was basically, it was heavy, vocals are fine, it has solos, it's brilliant then, best thing to ever come out. But since then I've kind of noticed it is quite generic, it is quite formulaic. The screams, where they're positioned and how they're utilised, is very predictable and lazy. The solos lack any real kind of thought or idea. It just seems that when the solos come up, they just try and do some kind of technical feat, and that's it. They're not trying to think of how can we make this sound nice, or what's the vibe of the song. What am I trying to convey here emotionally? What am I trying to show? It's just, I'm going to do something really fast and people are going to go, wowee, that was cool. And that is kind of it. So, pretty lacking solo-wise, which the band never really had a problem with previously, with it being two lead guitarists, and they had a nice diversity of solos and also could do melody. Recent years, the band has really struggled doing that, and I think Matt has even given up for the most part on doing solos because the band gotten lazy to some degree. And other than that, everything was just incredibly predictable. Riffs stopped having them intros like Shogun, where you had some amazingly an amazing lead riff or something really interesting. Now it's just basically we're playing 7 strings, the gain's turned up, and we're just gonna chug out something that sounds kind of heavy, and that'll be everything. It's just gonna be heavy with a lot of bass. Other than that, there's no need to do any kind of lead play for the intro to really heighten that intro and give it some excitement. Give it a melody or something, just heavy, consistently all the time, which made it incredibly bland because of that, and lacking any kind of talent from a songwriting perspective because all the verses are just stale and the same. And a lot of other bands who can't do an interesting lead or think of one will go to let's just do some heavy chugging because little kids and people who like screamo and think that is what real metal is, because Iron Maiden, pop music, is shit. So it really fitted in with the kind of formulaic, generic, mainstream. The sin in the sentence, I thought. The screams were in the standard place, near the pre-chorus. If it starts with singing, it then will go to screams. The bridge section is always going to be screams, or if the song verse is screams, then clearly the chorus is going to be sung. You can always tell that's where it's going to go. And then the song never really adapted into something else. The song just, it's the verse, that is going to be the verse. It's the chorus, that's going to be the chorus. The solo is going to come and go in a flash and not really do anything special because there's no thought put into it. There's no emotion, everything is just stale and heavy. There's no real sense of aggression or anger or heartache or melody or beauty. There's no emotion in the album. There may be some to a small degree, but not a lot. So when it comes to this album, what the Dead Men Say, it's released today as of recording this, and I looked up some reviews, and the reviews are basically 10s out of 10s, if not 9 out of 10. And for those that don't have a scale that goes to 10, then it's 5 out of 5, if not 4 out of 5. The album has received critical acclaim, saying it is a fantastic album and Trivium are at the top of the line of great metal bands. So what do I think? Well, I think it's bloody mediocre. I think the solos are atrocious. I actually think the solos in this is the worst Trivium has ever done. They are incredibly lazy, and it's going for a Saint Anger type of thing, where I don't even think there's actually any solos in the songs. There is, it's just, it's a very bloody poor excuse that I don't even really know, to be fair, because it's so bloody terrible. Matt's vocals, they're improved, but that's just vocals. As for having some nice sounding riffs that have melody to them, or that it's something really big and powerful, there's none of that. All the intros of these songs are all, yet again, 7-string guitars, a lot of gain and a lot of bloody bass, and it's just chugging it out because heavy metal. And that is all it is, because as we all know, metal is incredibly generic. You fucking idiots. So, I am a critique. I am not going to put on my ideas. Like, for me, for Trivium, I liked The Crusade. I thought that was a great album. I really like Shotgun, even though I despise Screamo. I hate Screamo. But I thought Matt singing had so much passion in his voice, because he really put a lot of effort into it. So even though it was very aggressive, I could feel the kind of anger and I could feel his emotions. The riffs were absolutely fantastic. They had some amazing riffs, and the tone that they used for that album is a very unique tone that other bands don't really utilise. So it was a sound that was very suited for that album. If you were to play just a snippet of the intro before Matt came in, you could easily say that's Shogun, because the sound is Shogun. They had their signature sound. This, a lot of friggin' death metal and metalcore bands have this heavy reliance on bass and gain tone, as well as just belting out something gent style or just belting out a bloody power chord, and just have the bass basically just be the interesting factor because it sounds heavy, and that's all you need to do. You don't need to make something musically interesting with showmanship, as Shogun had with their intro riffs, with all the amazing, you know, soaring melodies that the intros would have with the riffs. There's just none of that in this album, which again is quite atrocious. So, it's 10 tracks. The length of the album is only 46 minutes, which for a metal album is quite pathetic. A metal album should technically be definitely up in the 50s, if not around the hour mark and over. 46 is pretty bad. It's not the worst by far, it's just not that good. The first track is not really a track, it's an intro, which most bands do these days, just do an intro, and usually it has no purpose on the album because it doesn't tie into the actual first song. It just stops and then the first song has an intro of itself, meaning what was the point. Luckily though, Trivium do start off strong with the intro because it actually is the band playing, unlike other bands where it's just some kind of digital sound and it's not even the friggin' band. This is the band, and it builds on the sound. It starts soft and low in the mix, and then they start adding to it, which builds anticipation until when it gets nearer to the end of this intro track, it then just immediately goes into the first actual track, and it's built up that anticipation. It's a really nice build, and it is the band actually doing it, so you can appreciate that the band has actually done something musically for themselves, instead of other bands where they just rely on something digital and computerized, or some outside influence, and then doesn't go anywhere. This does. The name of the track is pretty pathetic. It's 9. Would anyone like to have a guess as to why the intro track is called 9? Yes, that is correct. It's the 9th album. How predictable and how cheesy. So, what the Dead Men Say is our first track, the title of the album. Now, obviously it just starts pretty heavy. There's no kind of melody or warmth to the sound. It's just very, very muddy bass sounding and kind of dark as well. It's not bright in the slightest. And the first line from Matt, the first thing that comes out of his mouth, is incredibly childish, which is him screaming, "Go!" Very childish. So there's that. So immediately quite pathetic off the bat. Getting into the verse, Matt's singing has changed a lot from his aggressive nature of Shogun mixed with melody, where I just felt he actually portrayed emotion. These days I feel Matt has a stick up his arse and is trying way too hard. His mouth is moving so friggin' much to try and enunciate every word and make sure every syllable of every word is coming out correctly. You don't want to say a word incorrectly. Everything has to be said properly and enunciate. And he stands there like he's absolutely stiff, like he's just got something shoved up his backside. And therefore it kind of means that it lacks this kind of emotionally delivery that he used to put in on the albums like Shogun and things. So all I'm getting is him basically just singing, but I don't really understand what his feelings are. I don't feel his emotional connection to it, because all I'm getting is he's trying so hard to sing this and enunciate his vocals that he's not relaxed, he's not enjoying it. It just sounds like he's straining so much and trying so hard just to actually speak, because he's having to go to a speech therapist and enunciate his words because he struggles. So it's kind of a bland performance from Matt. The verse itself doesn't really change that much from the intro. It kind of just bleeds in, and it's the same for the chorus. There's no like different factors where each section and changes and does its own different thing. So it's a versatile song. It isn't. Everything is just kind of bleeding together, just stuck together. And of course, with what is predictable, Matt is singing the chorus and he is singing the verse. So where would you put the screams? The typical place is to put them in the pre-chorus. So Trivium is at the top of their game and master songwriters, and this album's got critical acclaim. So where would they put this that really differentiates them from all these other bands? They put it in the pre-chorus. So that's, you thought it would be somewhere else, but they actually go, no, we're actually going to be like the others. And everyone's like, wow, I didn't expect that. Oh my god. Idiots. So then it goes back to the verse. Where's it going to go this time? How's it going to change? And the song constantly adapting, showing all their creative sides. It doesn't. It's surprising you did not expect that because, Trivium are on top of their game. And wow, it's not predictable in the slightest. You idiots. So, it goes back to the typical pre-chorus, which, what do you expect? It to change? Oh, no. That would have been the obvious good thing to do, but Trivium are going with the predictability because they're so great you don't expect them to be predictable. You idiots. So, goes back into the same friggin' chorus, and then the bridge section. Now, what do you expect will be the vocal part of the bridge? Is it going to be predictable? Most of it is being sung and the only screamed element has been in the pre-chorus, so where would the screams be now? Would they be in the bridge? It's usually where it would be, so would Trivium do that? Or would they really surprise you and do something else and change this formula? Of course not, because Trivium are on top of their game and they are very above all the other bands because they are exactly the same. You idiots. And then it comes to the solo, which I don't know how the hell to explain this. It is so bad. It starts really soft and it's just in with the rest of the mix, and at first I just thought, is this really it? They haven't turned the lead guitarist's volume up. He needs to be above the rest of the instruments so you can hear him. But no. And then later that happens. It's like, oh, okay then. So this is now the solo. And then he's repeating the same phrase over and over again. It's like, okay, it's coming up. He jerks off the guitar and then it's done in the matter of about 2 seconds, and the guitar jizzed itself because it couldn't hold it in. Wow. You idiots. And that is it. So, well, another predictable thing is when you get to the end of the chorus, what do you think you do when you get back into that heavy riff that gets you back into the verse? Yeah, it screamed, obviously, of course, like, who would have it any other friggin' way? And then you get Catastrophist, which starts with, playing on the 7th string. Who would have thought? Is it doing some nice, cool, interesting leads and holding these notes and it's just singing and everything? No, it's chords, obviously. Who would have friggin' thought it, eh? Idiots. Eventually, there is a kind of a lead from Matt. It's nothing kind of heightened. It's not this intriguing lead. It's just basically, it's a lead tone that isn't doing much of anything. And then it gets kind of soft. Like, it is basically just one guitar from Matt as he just kind of sings with an effect that just kind of lessens the power on his voice, so it's quite kind of quiet. And he's just singing it in the most dullest performance ever, just dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. What's the emotion of this song? Is he happy? Is he sad? It's not sad, it's robotic. There's no emotion here. Who would have thought it from fucking Trivium, mate? Oh my god, it's super surprising to get no emotion from the band. Top of the game. Sing with no emotion in you. That's the way to do it. You idiots. Anyway, so going on from that, the pre-chorus is technically the most interesting part about this because it kind of builds up energy. There is actually some energy to this instead of just heavy chords for the sake of it has to be heavy because we be metal, because we don't have a fucking clue what metal really is, you idiots, and no bloody emotion. The pre-chorus actually builds energy. It's got some energy. Matt actually doesn't sound like he's got a stick up his arse and he's actually trying. It actually seems like he's letting loose. He's a bit more relaxed in his vocal delivery here. And then it gets into the chorus where it's just, you're a catastrophist, da 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 da, you're a catastrophist, da 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 da, you're a catastrophist, da 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 da, and he keeps repeating himself. Now this is what you kind of get in pop music, where you keep repeating the chorus, well, the name of the song, Catastrophist, and then you just constantly repeat it over and over and over again, and it lacks much else in the way of lyrics, because pop singers, everything has to be basic and simple and easy to follow and easily digestible, because you can't have too much. So this being metal and Trivium being on the top of the game of metal, do the pop way formula, because you know, they're freaking brilliant, and you wouldn't have expected that from a band at the top of the range. So they take you by surprise. It's so surprising. Who would have thought it? You fucking idiots. So it's incredibly stale. It's repetitive. It's bland. The band just open up the sound just dun 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 dun. But it's not got a nice tone to it. Like, it sounds nice, just dun 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 dun. Like, that doesn't sound half bad, but the tone they go with and just how slow it is, it just comes across as just, it's not energetic enough. It's not really that catchy. And then Matt again is just trying so hard without putting emotion in. Just, you're a catastrophist, dun 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 dun, you're a catastrophist. It's just, it's not really exciting. There's not really a great sense of energy about this, or an emotion. It's just, well, it's bland, isn't it? And then it kind of carries on like that, all exactly the same. This is a 6-minute song, so you must think, well, it must change to some extent. Well, you get to the bridge section, and then you may get a bit of something from the guitars, which, again, I don't even know if there really is a solo to this. There's like a lot of repeated phrases, a lot of riffs, and maybe somewhere in there was supposed to be a solo, but it's a very poor excuse of one. And then obviously you'll get some kind of screams in these areas, because the majority of the song is vocals, therefore the screams are always dumped in the bridge. It's the typical place where you put them. That's the formula. If it's basically, we're gonna write a metal song, let's go to the chart. Now we can have singing, and if we want screaming, we can have the screaming in this section here, which the graph tells us, or we can have it in this section here from what the graph tells us of how to make a song that has singing mixed with screams. We'll put it in the bridge. It's like, why can't you just change the formula? They don't, because Trivium are at the top of their freaking game, changing the path of metal as we know it. You fucking idiots. And then we get into amongst the shadows and the stones. So it starts with screams. He's just screaming his head off, and then he continues screaming his head off, which doesn't have a lot of versatility to it. Screams, it's not like vocals with singing where there is a lot of range and a lot of emotion conveyed. You can't sound heartbroken when you're screaming, you can't sound happy when you're screaming, it's just screaming. You can't really convey emotions with it. And then lyrically, it's very limiting. You can't scream about getting a girlfriend and you're really happy when you're screaming your head off about it. It's just, it would be ridiculous. So it's very limiting, not a lot you can do with it. It all sounds exactly the same from the start all the way to the end of the verse. So it's incredibly bland. Instrumentally, obviously, there's a lot of like technical stuff going on, and it's not just belting out chords, so it sounds a bit more interesting. It's just a shame that it's overshadowed by the fucking atrocious screaming. When it gets to the chorus, it actually isn't half bad. Matt actually sounds a bit more relaxed yet again. Therefore, he sounds like he's actually connecting with the song and he's actually having fun singing instead of straining to pronounce his bloody words and sing it properly. He just sounds like he's relaxed and he's just enjoying himself a bit more. And so does the band. They sound like they open up and it just starts working hand in hand. But the song, as I say, it doesn't really work seeing that it's mixed with all of it being screamed. And again, it's formulaic and it's predictable. It's not anything new or exciting. It's just heavy song where it's you scream from start to the end of the verse and the vocalist does the chorus, the singing part, and then the next verse, what do you think's going to happen? It's still going to be screaming, and then it's going to go back to the singer, then it's going to go to scream solo, and then maybe the chorus again. It's predictable, just like all the other tracks behind it. But heck, this is a critically acclaimed album because it is doing some amazing feats of doing absolutely everything every other friggin' band does. Very mainstream as well as being very repetitive. The song constantly repeats on itself. It doesn't do anything exciting musically. The solos are very bland, and what there is of solos are very bloody short and is just guitar wanking, and that is it. Which shows great talent from guitarists like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, all these gods on the guitars which do all these melodies, jazz, blues, shred and everything. What a bunch of fucking idiots, you just shred. They're doing all this nonsense and everything, like, oh, fuck that, that's crap. You fucking idiots. Anyway, getting on to Bleed Into Me. Now this song is an interesting title because it's Bleed Into Me, as for I prefer knowing it as the song that bleeds together. Because it just bleeds into the chorus. It doesn't have its differentiating parts. The intro bleeds into the verse and the verse bleeds into the chorus. There is barely a shift in anything to really differentiate the two. So the song just all bleeds together. Cleverly titled Bleed Into Me, the verse bleeds into the chorus and then chorus bleeds into verse. It's just so bad, and it's the melody, and it's just slow and it's dull. It's the metal thing where it's just, oh, we have to have a melodic, so we just basically turn everything down and just get very slow and sing about the typical crap. And come on, like, do something inventive instead of just do what every other band does when it comes to melodic, where it's just like, oh, we have to turn it down because that's how everyone does melodic songs. Like, come on, if you're talented, then do something different with it, instead of just do exactly what every other friggin' band does. Why the crap is this really critically acclaimed? I do not know. The Defiant. Right, so the Defiant goes to heavy, which, who would have thought it? You know, like, you've just come off of a very melodic track. It's the melody. So where would you go after this? Another melody? Well, no, the predictable place would be to go to heavy because people are going to be sick of them all. Bring the heavy back in. So it goes to friggin' heavy. It's fucking predictable. But Trivium fans are not going to know this. They're going to think, goodness me, this is all new. This is all exciting. It's not predictable. No other band has done this because we're a bunch of frickin' idiots. You fucking idiots. So, The Defiant. It is mostly screamed yet again for the verse because why not? That is the formulaic way of doing it. That is the structure. That's the predictable thing. Meaning, what would the pre-chorus and chorus be? That's right, it's going to be singing because that is the typical structure of how to do this. The good part about this is it is actually the best pre-chorus and chorus. I actually really like the pre-chorus and chorus in The Defiant, and it's such a shame that the verse is just screamo bollocks, which just sounds exactly the same as Amongst the Shadows and the Stones because it's screaming, so it sounds exactly like the screaming of that track. It's not going to sound any fucking different, is it? And then the instruments are just doing something kind of heavy, fast and technical because he's screaming, therefore why not? So it's all bloody predictable and just exactly the same, just done over and over and over again. But the thing with this, when it comes to the pre-chorus, is Matt really actually opens himself up. He doesn't seem constricted with trying to pronounce every friggin' line and just try and actually sing properly to make sure he's actually hitting the note, because he actually has to try, because he struggles to do it otherwise, I'm guessing. It just sounds like he's just so relaxed and he is really going with the vibe of the track for once, and therefore it really actually helps. It sounds pleasant. His voice therefore sounds pleasant because there's a nice emotion to it. And then the band actually get a nice tone, and then they actually start working along with Matt, which then heightens the sound and the feeling of that it gives, and it sounds really nice. And then when it actually goes to the chorus, it heightens itself even further. It doesn't just bleed itself in, it then shifts another gear up, and it just sounds nice. The only problem is basically the screams come in to go defiant, defiant, because pop, and they repeat the song over and over and over again, because Trivium fans would probably forget what the fuck they're listening to because their brains have melted from garbage that they keep listening to. So Trivium have to keep reminding them, yeah, we are Trivium, this is the Defiant, it's okay, don't worry, nothing's changed too drastically. Oh, by the way, we've come back round to the chorus. So again, this song is the Defiant. Again, I'll repeat it for the second time now, the Defiant. And then for the third time, obviously, they have to repeat it again. It's the Defiant, remember, the Defiant. So that is atrocious because it doesn't add anything. It's just the Defiant, and then the Defiant, the Defiant. There's nothing to that. It could be good without it, possibly, because it's not adding anything. What? The Defiant, okie dokie. It would be nice if it just kind of Matt stopped, and where it goes to Defiant, the Defiant, that's not screams, you just have the instruments just kind of take that breather, and then Matt comes in, so you just get that little bit of a breather and a little bit of a pause, and then get back into the beauty that Matt is actually doing now with his voice for once in his friggin' life. So that's the only problem, basically, just the screams of the Defiant, which I think they should have removed. But other than that, the pre-chorus and chorus of this song is rather really good. It's definitely the best pre-chorus and chorus that Trivium have done in most recent years, definitely, as well as one of the best vocal performances from Matt, because he actually is relaxed and he seems to just be like, to hell with trying to do this properly, to hell with really trying, I'm just gonna have fun with this and just really enjoy this, and he just seems to really connect with it, unlike all the others where it just seems like he's not connecting, he's just really trying to sing it properly, which just leaves everything quite dull because you're listening to something which lacks emotion, therefore it's just things blurted out, just notes that are completely empty and void of emotion, which makes it struggle. The chorus, not the chorus, the solo, again, there's not much to it. The solos of this entire album is just barely anything, and then if it is something, it is basically just wank off your guitar and don't do anything else. No, I kind of gave up around this point because it's not going to really change that much. It's just going to be the same. Although Scattering the Ashes, I will say, is a bit more fun compared to the other tracks because, yet again, Matt is more relaxed in this track, and the music actually changes. It's not just really heavily bass-driven, use the 7th string. It'll be the chords, but then they'll take a pause, and then it's just basically the bass along with Matt, and then it goes back to the guitar, so it's just everything's opened up a lot more, and it's just a lot more easily digestible and more musical compared to just belting out just something really heavy that lacks all sorts of musicality to it. There's nothing melodic or musical about it. As for Scattering the Ashes, that actually does creep into the song because Matt is relaxed and he actually seems to be singing with somewhat grace in this track. along with the band basically just opening up instead of just trying to belt out something for the sake of just let's try and make it heavy. It opens up, it takes short little breathers and pauses, and that's nice because it's something nice and you can relax to it, and it's a lot more enjoyable instead of just constantly just getting battered over the head with just the same crap over and over and over again. Again, as I say, the track is only around 3 minutes, which is a bit of a shame. Solo a bit pants again, and there's still no epic kind of leads in intros. None of the songs have that again, and that is basically the album. It is just a lot of just heavy chords, playing on the 7th string, turning up the gain, have a lot of bass, and then Matt singing with a stick up his arse, trying to pronounce everything correctly, and lacking in solos and diversity. Everything's very formulaic, where the songs never really change that drastically. The placement of singing with screams, that's incredibly predictable. You know exactly where the scream's going to be, exactly where the singing's going to be, depending on how the song is going. So it becomes very predictable, very stale. Other bands have done this. It's not unique, it's nothing new. And then the songs don't evolve, so it doesn't show diversity in the songwriting. And even from song to song, there's not that great deal of diversity. All the riffs are all exactly the same. The tones never really change. It's always this dark bass heavy thing. And that is the tone of the entire album. Matt has a style of how he sings, and that is quite consistent apart from when it gets into Scattering the Ashes, as well as the singing part in The Defiant. And then bits and pieces here and there. Other than that, he is very consistent with how he sings. The solos are very consistent, as in there is not really anything to them, if any, and when there is, it's just jerk off the guitar. And that is it, because they lack any kind of talent or, you know, songwriting skill. So everything's very predictable and bland and basic, apart from the few interesting things here and there, like Scattering the Ashes, where it is a bit more appealing but not to a high degree, and then The Defiant, which has a good pre-chorus and chorus, but still not to a humongous degree. It's just a big improvement over just the rest, which is just the regurgitated garbage just on repeat and recycle of a pop formula of just have your verse and your chorus and then rinse and recycle, get to a bridge, do a bit of a solo and be done with it. And that is basically it. And then it's 46 minutes. The songs are just around 4 or 5 minutes. You get 2 which are at 6. So no song really progresses. Everything's the same. It's just kind of bland. Scoring the album, it would be 6 out of 10. It's just basically, it's just above average. If not 5 out of 10 is average. There is nothing really special about this. I don't know why it's critically acclaimed, because there is nothing special, unique or interesting about this. There is nothing sonically musical about this album. It's just crap solos with some very, very bland, hackless, talentless riffs. There's nothing musical or grand about it that can stand the test of time. It is just a heavy riff, and that is it. So it's pretty pathetic, and a very, very poor album, really. Like, Matt sounds fine, besides having to stick up his ass and then his little burst, but it being basically just 2 parts. Scattering the Ashes and then a bit of The Defiant, and that is it out of 10 tracks. Is not really like saying he is that great. And then musically, the sound and tone is always consistent, which is appalling, because there's just no diversity in the bloody album in that case. So it becomes stale very quickly. Everything's formulaic, everything's stale, nothing really changes. How everything's structured in the song, you can start predicting. It's not critical acclaim, it is a very, very generic album. The way I explain this album is it's basically the heavy mainstream album. It's mainstream, for all the mainstream metal fans who just kind of want something that is just, it has to be heavy and it has to have screams. Other than that, that is perfected metal. When that isn't really metal, it's just for the really, really childish, brain dead people who say that they're metal. So that's it. It's a heavy mainstream album, and that is it. It's not special, unique, interesting, really thoughtful of an album. It's not deep at all. It's really bland. So yeah, 5 out of 10. If not, maybe a 6 out of 10, and that's it. It's just an average, if not slightly above average album, and that's it. Other than that, it's just incredibly dull, and I couldn't really get through it because it was all the same crap, and it was all boring anyway, with lacking any kind of energy and emotion. It was just slow, boring stuff, boring tone that lacked anything interesting about it, and I'm probably not going to listen to it again because there's nothing appealing to come back. There's nothing really unique about this that makes me come back. Is there a great solo anywhere? No. Is there a great vocal performance anywhere? Not really. Is there a great riff anywhere? No. Is there a great lead in any part through the song? No, because they don't really do that. So there's nothing to make this unique to come back to. So go listen to something else. And that is it from me until the next video. So I'm going to have pissed off a lot of people, but that's the way I feel and think. I'm entitled to my opinion, so that's what I think. And you clicked on this video because you want to know what a different person's opinion is. I've told you, so don't complain. So until the next one, see you later.